Imagine for a second that the greatest technological leap in human history didn't come from a lab in Silicon Valley or a secret bunker in Los Alamos. Imagine it fell out of the sky.
And we didn't just watch it fall. We picked it up, dusted it off, and spent the last 80 years trying to figure out how to turn it into a weapon.
That is the ultimate conspiracy, isn't it? We aren't talking about little green men visiting for tea. We are talking about hardware, nuts and bolts.
Exactly. The conversation has shifted. It's no longer about are we alone? It's about who has the wreckage, and more importantly, who figures out how to use it first.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are diving into the deep end of the off-world arms race. We're looking at the claims that global superpowers are locked in a cold war over alien technology.
It sounds like science fiction, I know, but when you look at the trajectory of modern history, the sudden explosion of tech in the mid 20th century, and you pair that with sworn testimony from intelligence officials, the picture gets unsettlingly real.
Let's start with the foundation of this, because for decades this was just folklore. It was blurry photos and campfire stories, but something changed the narrative from ghost stories to national security threat.
Right. To understand the present, you have to look at the timeline. Culturally, everyone points to Roswell in 1947. That's the genesis moment. The military announces they found a flying disc, and then hours later they say, no, sorry, it was a weather balloon.
That pivot was so clumsy it basically birthed the modern conspiracy theory.
It did. But for a long time, the focus was on the bodies or the event. The engineering aspect, the idea that we have a dedicated program to reverse engineer this stuff, really didn't solidify until the late 80s. And that brings us to the most polarizing figure in this entire field.
Bob Lazar. You can't avoid him.
You really can't. Whether you think he's a fraud or a prophet, he changed the vocabulary. In 1989, he claims he was hired to work at S4, a hidden facility near Area 51. He wasn't there to negotiate with aliens, he was there to do a job. His job was to reverse engineer the propulsion system.
And the details he gave were incredibly specific. He wasn't talking about magic, he was talking about physics.
Precisely. He described craft that flew belly first. He talked about using element 115 to generate gravity waves. At the time, element 115 wasn't even on the periodic table. We've since synthesized it, moscovium, though it's highly unstable. But the point is, he described a mechanism of travel that defied aerodynamics.
And that's the part that gives me pause. Because fast forward to 2004, the famous Tic Tac incident involving the USS Nimitz. We have Pentagon-released video of an object with no wings, no exhaust, moving exactly how Lazar described 30 years prior.
That's where the skepticism starts to crack. You have these pilots, Top Gun graduates, the best observers in the world, seeing objects that ignore inertia. They accelerate from 0 to Mach 20 in a second. If a human were inside that, they'd turn into jelly.
So, if Lazar was the whisper in the 80s, who turned up the volume? Because recently this hasn't been coming from guys in the shadows. It's been coming from the halls of Congress.
That is the massive bus vibe shift we saw in 2023. Enter David Grusch. This wasn't a random guy. This was a high-ranking intelligence officer with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. He was on the UAP task force. He had the highest clearance you can get.
And he didn't go to a tabloid. He went to the Inspector General. He went under oath.
That's the critical difference. Grusch testified that the U.S. has a multi-decade crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. He used the term non-human intelligence. He claims we have intact craft. And perhaps most disturbingly, he testified that people have been harmed or killed to keep this secret.
That adds a layer of darkness to it. It implies that this isn't just about scientific curiosity. It's a desperate protection of an asset. But here is the devil's advocate question. Why? Why sit on technology that could solve the energy crisis or revolutionize travel?
Because of the geopolitical nightmare, think about it. This isn't about free energy for your house. This is about the ultimate trump card.
Like the atomic bomb in 1945?
Bigger. Much bigger. If you possess a craft that can manipulate gravity, that can travel from Washington to Moscow in 3 seconds without being detected on radar, and can disable nuclear silos at will, you don't just win the war, you win reality. You become the unquestioned ruler of the geopolitical board.
So the secrecy isn't necessarily to hide the aliens from the public. It's to hide the progress from the enemy.
Exactly. It's Cold War 2.0. There is a prevailing theory that the U.S. is freaking out right now. The rumor is that the secrecy has been so tight, so compartmentalized, that the scientists working on it have hit a wall. They can't figure it out because they can't talk to their peers.
Meanwhile, you have adversaries like China or Russia who might be throwing brute force at the problem.
Right? If China figures out the anti-gravity drive before the U.S. does, the global balance of power shifts overnight. That's why you see this sudden push for disclosure. It might not be out of the goodness of their hearts. It might be a strategic move to get mainstream science involved to crack the code before it's too late.
That is a terrifying thought, that we are in a race to unlock a gun that we don't understand. But let's look at the tech itself. What are we actually looking for? The Pentagon has these 5 observables.
These are the 5 things that if we see them, we assume it's not human. 1. Anti-gravity lift. No wings, no rotors. 2. Instantaneous acceleration. 3. Hypersonic velocity without a sonic boom.
Which breaks the laws of physics as we know them. If you go that fast in the atmosphere, you should create a massive heat signature and a boom.
Exactly. 4 is transmedium travel, meaning it goes from space to air to underwater without slowing down. And 5 is low observability or cloaking. Now, we have stealth, we have fast missiles, but we don't have anything that does all of those things.
Some skeptics argue that this is just the B-2 bomber effect. Back in the 80s, if you saw a B-2 Spirit, you'd think it was an alien ship. Maybe the Tic Tac is just a classified U.S. drone using some new plasma propulsion.
It's the most grounded theory. It's possible that we made a breakthrough in metamaterials, materials engineered at the atomic level, and we are testing it. But Grusch and others specifically mentioned that the biology found with these crafts was non-human.
Biology. That's a word that stops you in your tracks.
It implies pilots, or at least occupants. And that brings up the philosophical question: if we are stripping these machines for parts, are we like cavemen trying to reverse engineer an iPhone?
We might figure out that the glass breaks if you hit it with a rock, but we won't understand the microchip inside.
And that's the danger. What if we trigger something? What if the technology isn't just a machine, but something conscious? There are reports of these objects reacting to the observers, anticipating the pilot's moves. That suggests a level of interface we can't even comprehend.
It makes you wonder about the cost of this arms race. Grusch mentioned white-collar crime to fund these programs off the books. We are talking about billions of dollars, completely unaccountable to Congress or the taxpayer.
It's a black budget empire. And if the rumors are true, private aerospace companies are holding the physical assets to keep them away from Freedom of Information Act requests. It's a shell game. Lockheed Martin or Raytheon might have a piece of a hull in a warehouse, and because they are a private company, the government can say, "We don't have anything."
That is incredibly clever and incredibly undemocratic.
It is. But from their perspective, it's necessary survival. If you admit you have it, you admit you can't control it. Or worse, you tell your enemies exactly what you have.
So where does this leave us? We have legislation now, led by Chuck Schumer, of all people, trying to force declassification. They are using specific language, non-human intelligence. You don't put that in a bill unless you think there is something to find.
I think we are standing on a razor's edge. We are either about to witness the greatest ontological shock in human history, the confirmation that we are not alone and we have their tech, or we are witnessing the most sophisticated psychological operation ever run. Maybe there are no aliens. Maybe the U.S. government wants China to think we have alien weapons, so they don't mess with us.
The ultimate bluff.
It worked in the 80s with Star Wars, the SDI program. We convinced the Soviets we could shoot down their nukes with lasers. We couldn't. But they spent themselves into bankruptcy trying to counter it. Maybe UFOs are just the new Star Wars.
But that doesn't explain the pilots. It doesn't explain the radar data. It doesn't explain what Commander Fravor saw with his own eyes off the coast of San Diego.
No, it doesn't. And that's why I lean toward the idea that there is a there. The smoke is too thick for there not to be a fire.
It feels like the dam is breaking. Every month, a new whistleblower comes forward. The stigma is evaporating.
And that's a good thing. Because this technology, if it can be understood, changes everything. Clean energy, space travel, material science. Keeping it in a bunker to build a better missile is a tragedy.
or a necessity, depending on who is out there watching us.
That's the chilling thought to end on. If we are dissecting their scouts, are they sending the cavalry?
Let's hope not. We've covered a lot of ground today. From the deserts of New Mexico to the hearing rooms of DC, it's a complex puzzle, and we probably only have the corner pieces.
But we'll keep watching. The truth is leaking out, one redacted document at a time.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to this deep dive. It's a lot to process, but it's a conversation we need to have.
Definitely. Stay curious, stay skeptical.
And keep your eyes on the skies. We'll see you in the next episode.